The stars looked different from up here. Captain Marcus Chun stood at the viewing port of the Earth diplomatic shuttle, watching the massive structure grow larger as they approached. It looked like someone had carved a palace from a single piece of crystal and set it spinning between two suns. The light passing through it created rainbows that stretched for miles. 5 minutes to docking, Captain, Lieutenant Sarah Park said from the pilot's seat. Her hands moved across the controls with practiced ease. Their guidance system just took over. We're locked in now. Marcus nodded and adjusted his uniform one more time. It felt strange wearing the formal diplomatic blues instead of his usual flight suit. Behind him, the rest of the delegation checked their equipment and notes. Ambassador Wilson, a silver-haired woman who had spent 40 years in the Foreign Service, looked calm. Everyone else looked nervous. "Remember," Wilson said quietly, "we're the first humans they've ever met in person. Everything we do matters. Be polite, be respectful, and for God's sake, don't touch anything unless they tell you it's okay." The shuttle settled into the docking bay with barely a vibration. Marcus had to admit, whoever designed their guidance systems knew what they were doing. The airlock cycled, and the door opened with a soft hiss. The greeting party waited on the other side. They were tall, easily 7 feet on average, with skin that seemed to shift between blue and silver depending on how the light hit it. Their eyes were larger than human eyes, with vertical pupils like a cat's. They wore flowing robes that looked like they were made from liquid metal. The lead figure stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Welcome to the Zarathian Empire. I am High Chancellor Draketh. The Empress awaits you in the throne room. Please, follow me." The walk through the palace took nearly 20 minutes. Every surface gleamed. The walls showed images that moved like videos, but had depth like holograms. Marcus saw battles, celebrations, and scenes from worlds he couldn't even imagine. Other Zarathians stopped to stare at the humans as they passed. Some looked curious. Others looked suspicious. "They've never seen aliens before?" Lieutenant Park whispered. "They've met other species through long-range communication," Ambassador Wilson whispered back. "But they don't allow visitors to their core worlds. We're the first exception they've made in 300 years. "Why us?" Marcus asked. "That's what we're here to find out." The throne room doors were 50 feet tall and covered in carvings that seemed to tell a story. 2 guards, wearing armor that glowed with its own light, pulled the doors open. The room beyond was huge. Columns reached up toward a ceiling that showed the stars outside. A long carpet of deep purple led to a raised platform where a throne sat, and on that throne sat the Empress. Valshara was beautiful in a way that made Marcus forget to breathe for a moment. Even sitting, she looked tall and powerful. Her skin had a deeper blue tone than the others, almost like sapphire. She wore a crown that looked like frozen starlight. Her eyes were gold instead of silver. High Chancellor Draketh led them down the carpet. "Your Imperial Majesty, I present the delegation from Earth. Ambassador Catherine Wilson and her staff." Ambassador Wilson bowed. "Your Majesty, it is an honor to—" She stopped talking because the Empress had gone completely still. Those golden eyes were locked on Marcus. He stood slightly behind the ambassador, as protocol required, but there was no hiding from that stare. The silence stretched. Every noble in the court stopped moving. Some of them touched devices on their wrists or whispered to each other. Marcus felt sweat forming on the back of his neck. Had he done something wrong already? Was his uniform improper? Did humans smell bad to them? "You," the Empress said. Her voice was soft but carried through the entire room. "Step forward." Marcus glanced at Ambassador Wilson. She looked as confused as he felt, but nodded slightly. He walked forward until he was at the front of their group. The Empress stood up slowly. She was even taller than he'd thought, maybe 7.5 feet. She walked down the steps from her throne, moving like water. She stopped 5 feet away from him and just stared. "What is your name?" she asked. "Captain Marcus Chun, Your Majesty. I'm the military advisor for the delegation. Your genetic profile." Provided immediately. High Chancellor Draketh stepped forward. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should. Now," the Empress said. Not looking away from Marcus. Ambassador Wilson pulled out a datapad. "Of course, Your Majesty. We have full medical and genetic records for all delegation members, prepared for your security teams." A court official took the datapad and brought it to the Empress. She touched it, and a holographic display appeared in the air. Marcus saw his own face rotating in 3 dimensions, along with streams of data he couldn't read. The Empress studied it for what felt like forever. Finally, she spoke, but not to Marcus. "Clear the room." Draketh looked shocked. "Your Majesty, the court," I said. "Clear the room. Everyone except the humans." The nobles began filing out, whispering to each other. Some threw curious looks at Marcus. Others looked angry. The guards stayed by the doors, but everyone else left. Even Draketh left, though he looked unhappy about it. When they were alone, the Empress looked at Marcus again. This time, he saw something in her eyes that he recognized. Grief, and maybe fear. 20 cycles ago, she said quietly, my consort was assassinated. His name was Kithrion. He was the love of my life, the father of my children, and the greatest warrior our empire had ever known. Marcus didn't know what to say, so he stayed quiet. You look exactly like him, the Empress continued. Not similar, not close, exactly. The same face, the same height, the same way of standing. I have studied your genetic data. You are human. You are from Earth. Your ancestry traces back through your recorded history. She paused. But you look exactly like him. Ambassador Wilson found her voice. Your Majesty, I assure you this is complete coincidence. We had no knowledge of coincidence, the Empress repeated. She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. In my empire, we have a saying. The universe doesn't believe in coincidence. Everything has a reason. She turned away from them. I need time to think. You will be taken to your quarters. We will speak again tomorrow. She walked back to her throne and sat down, suddenly looking very tired. Your Majesty, Marcus said, surprising himself. She looked at him. I'm sorry for your loss. Something flickered in her golden eyes. She nodded once. High Chancellor Draketh appeared at the door as if he'd been waiting just outside. Please, follow me to your quarters. As they left the throne room, Marcus could feel the Empress watching him. He didn't look back. Lieutenant Park walked close to him. Well, she whispered, that was the strangest first contact I've ever heard of. Yeah, Marcus said. He had a feeling things were about to get much stranger. Marcus woke up to someone knocking on his door. The quarters they'd been given were bigger than his entire apartment back on Earth. The bed was too long for him, made for someone 7 feet tall. The walls showed a peaceful forest scene that moved with a gentle breeze. Come in, he called out. Sitting up high, Chancellor Draketh entered, followed by 2 guards and a person carrying a large case of equipment. Captain Chun, the Empress requires genetic verification. You will submit to testing. It wasn't a request. Marcus stood up and nodded. Of course. They took samples of everything. Blood, hair, skin cells, even saliva. The technician worked quickly and efficiently, scanning him with devices that hummed and glowed. Draketh watched the whole process with sharp eyes. Am I in some kind of trouble? Marcus asked. That remains to be determined, Draketh said. The resemblance to our late Emperor is troubling. Some in the court believe you may be a clone created to manipulate Her Majesty. Others think you may be some kind of spy or weapon. I'm just a pilot from Earth, Marcus said. I've never been off my home world until 3 weeks ago. We shall see what the tests reveal. They left him alone after that. Marcus tried to go back to sleep, but couldn't. He got up and found his datapad, reading through all the information Earth's intelligence services had gathered about the Zarathian Empire. There wasn't much. They were powerful, controlled 12 star systems, and had been around for over 2,000 years. They valued honor, strength, and something called the harmony of purpose, which the analysts weren't sure how to translate properly. There was almost nothing about the Empress personally, and only a brief mention of Emperor Kethrian. He had died 20 years ago in an assassination. No details about who killed him or why. 3 hours later, Lieutenant Park came to his door. Ambassador Wilson wants everyone in the main room. They sent us a message. The whole delegation gathered. Ambassador Wilson looked tired, like she hadn't slept at all. She held up her datapad. We've been summoned to a private meeting with the Empress in 1 hour. Just me and Captain Chun. She looked at Marcus. Your genetic tests came back. You're 100% human. Your DNA traces back to Earth with no contamination or artificial modification. They found nothing unusual. Then why does he look like their dead emperor? Lieutenant Park asked. That's what we're about to find out. The throne room was empty this time except for the Empress and one other person. A woman, shorter than the Empress, but still tall by human standards, with silver hair and kind eyes. She wore robes of deep green. Ambassador Wilson. Captain Chun, please sit. The Empress gestured to chairs that had been set up in a small circle. Sitting made the meeting feel less formal, almost friendly. This is Murthai, my oldest friend and advisor. She knew Kethrian well. I wanted her here. They all sat down. Marcus felt strange being at eye level with the Empress. Up close, he could see the tiredness in her face, the weight she carried. Your tests confirm you are human, the Empress said to Marcus. No clone. No genetic engineering. This makes the resemblance more confusing, not less. She paused. Murthai has suggested I speak with you directly, to see if you are like him in more than appearance. I'm happy to answer any questions, Your Majesty, Marcus said. Tell me about Earth, about humanity. Why should we accept you into the Galactic Council? Marcus glanced at Ambassador Wilson. She nodded slightly. This was his chance to make their case. Humanity is still young compared to species like yours, he began. We've only had space travel for about 200 years. We've only had civilization for maybe 10,000 years. But in that time, we've survived things that should have destroyed us dozens of times over. Such as? Murthai asked. Wars, diseases, climate disasters, asteroid impacts. We fought each other, nearly destroyed our own planet, and somehow managed to pull back from the edge every time. Marcus leaned forward. We're not the strongest species. We're not the smartest. But we're survivors. We adapt. We improvise. We find ways to keep going, even when it seems impossible. The Empress studied him with those golden eyes. Kethrian would say similar things. He believed strength came from overcoming hardship. But he also believed in honor and following the ancient codes. With respect, Your Majesty, humans aren't always honorable. We cheat when we need to. We break rules if it means survival. We fight dirty. Marcus saw Murthai frown. But that's what kept us alive. The universe doesn't care about fair fights. No, the Empress said quietly. It does not. She stood up and walked to a wall panel. She touched it, and a holographic image appeared. A Zarathian male, tall and powerful, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. This was Kethrian. Marcus stood up too. The resemblance was shocking. They could have been twins. Same facial structure, same build, same way of holding themselves. But there were differences. Cathrion's eyes were silver, not brown. His skin had that blue-silver tone. And there was something in his expression, a certainty that Marcus knew he didn't have. "I see why this is difficult for you," Marcus said softly. "I'm sorry." "He was murdered by a faction that opposed his reforms," the Empress said. "He wanted to open the Empire to new ideas, to trade with other species, to move beyond the old ways. They killed him for it." She turned to Marcus. "For 20 cycles, I have ruled alone. I have continued his vision, but more slowly, more carefully. And then you appear, looking exactly like him. Tell me, Captain, do you believe in fate?" "I believe in probability," Marcus said. "The universe is big. Sometimes unlikely things happen. Maybe I just won the genetic lottery in the worst possible way." Marthai laughed. It was a pleasant sound, like bells. "He is not like Cathrion at all, Belshara. Listen to him. Genetic lottery. Cathrion would speak of destiny and purpose." The Empress smiled for the first time since Marcus had met her. It transformed her face. "You are right, old friend. He is different." Over the next hour, they talked. The Empress asked Marcus questions about Earth, about human culture, about his own life. He told her about growing up in Shanghai, about learning to fly, about the first time he saw Earth from orbit and cried, because it was so beautiful. Ambassador Wilson watched quietly, only speaking when asked. Marcus got the feeling this wasn't really about diplomacy anymore. The Empress was trying to understand him as a person. "You use humor often," the Empress observed, "even when discussing serious matters." "It's a human thing," Marcus said. "We laugh so we don't cry. Helps us deal with stress." Cathrion never joked. He was always serious, always thinking about duty and responsibility. "That sounds exhausting," Marcus said, then immediately worried he'd said something wrong. But the Empress laughed. It was small and quiet, but real. It was. He was exhausting. But I loved him anyway. The meeting ended with the Empress agreeing to continue discussions about Earth's petition to join the Galactic Council. As Marcus and Ambassador Wilson left, Murthai caught Marcus's arm. "You have given her something she has not had in many years," the advisor said quietly. "The ability to speak about him without only feeling pain. That is a gift." "I didn't do anything," Marcus said. "You were yourself. Sometimes that is enough." Back in their quarters, Ambassador Wilson poured herself a drink from the supplies they brought. "Well, Captain, you just had a private audience with the most powerful leader in 3 sectors. How do you feel?" Marcus sat down heavily. Confused. Sorry for her. And worried. About what? About what happens when the people who killed her husband find out I'm here. The state dinner was held in a hall that could have fit 3 football fields inside it. Long tables stretched in rows, each one covered with dishes that Marcus couldn't identify. Some of them moved. Others changed colors. A few seemed to be singing quietly. "Stick to the blue ones," Lieutenant Park whispered. The briefing said those are safe for human consumption. Marcus nodded and filled his plate carefully. The Zarathian nobles watched the humans with open curiosity. Some looked friendly. Others looked at them the way someone might look at an interesting bug-bot ambassador. Wilson sat at the high table with the Empress and the senior nobles. Marcus was placed at a lower table with other military officers and officials. Across from him sat a Zarathian named Lord Kesvin, who wore deep red robes and had scars across his face. "So human," Kesvin said, his voice carrying across the table. "Tell us, what makes your species worthy of joining the council? You have no great military. Your technology is primitive. Your worlds are few." Marcus took a bite of something that tasted like chicken mixed with cinnamon. "You're right. We're not powerful compared to the council members. But we learn fast. We adapt. And we have perspectives that might be useful. Perspectives? Another noble, a woman named Lady Sherol, leaned forward. What perspective can children offer to those who have walked among the stars for millennia? The perspective of someone who's had to fight for every inch, Marcus said. Your species, from what I understand, evolved on a world with abundant resources. You built your civilization over thousands of years of steady growth. Humans? We evolved on a world that kept trying to kill us. Ice ages, predators, diseases, disasters. We shouldn't have made it. But we did. Survival of the lucky? Casvin said with a dismissive wave. No, survival of the adaptable. Marcus set down his fork. You want an example? 300 years ago, we nearly destroyed ourselves with nuclear weapons. We had enough missiles pointed at each other to make our whole planet uninhabitable. But we stepped back from that edge. We learned. We adapted. Now we're out here, talking to you. Lord Casvin smiled, but it wasn't friendly. And yet, you still have wars on Earth. Your own briefing documents admit this. Some humans fight other humans even now. How can we trust a species that cannot achieve peace among itself? Because we're honest about it, Marcus said. We know what we are. We're not perfect. We're still learning. But at least we're trying. And when we make alliances, we keep them. The conversation moved on to other topics, but Marcus noticed Casvin watching him with calculating eyes. Something about the noble made Marcus's instincts itch. He'd spent enough time in combat zones to recognize danger when he saw it. The dinner continued for hours. There were speeches and performances. A group of Zarathian musicians played instruments that created light as well as sound, painting pictures in the air. It was beautiful. Marcus was watching the performance when he noticed something wrong. A server, moving through the crowd with drinks, was taking a path that would bring him very close to Marcus's table. But the server's movements were too precise, too focused. And his hand was near his robes, touching something hidden. Training took over. Marcus stood up quickly, his chair scraping back. The server's eyes flicked to him, and Marcus saw the calculation there. The decision being made. The server's hand came out of his robes holding something small and metallic. Marcus didn't wait to see what it was. He grabbed Lieutenant Park, who was sitting next to him, and pulled them both down. Just as the device flew through the air, where his head had been, the device hit the wall behind them and exploded. It wasn't a big explosion, more like a firecracker, but the shrapnel scattered across the room. Nobles screamed and dove for cover. Guards rushed forward. Marcus rolled to his feet, pulling Park up with him. The server was running. Without thinking, Marcus ran after him. He heard shouts behind him, heard the heavy footsteps of guards following, but he was faster, lighter. The server ran toward a side door. Marcus tackled him before he got there. They went down hard. The server was strong, stronger than a human, but Marcus fought dirty. He got his knee into the Zarathian's back and twisted his arm up in a lock that would break bones if he moved wrong. Don't move, Marcus said, breathing hard. Guards surrounded them within seconds. They pulled the server up roughly, checking him for more weapons. High Chancellor Draketh appeared, looking furious. Take him to the detention cells, Draketh ordered. He looked at Marcus. You are unharmed? I'm fine. Marcus stood up, wincing. He'd scraped his palms on the floor. Is anyone hurt? Minor injuries only. He moved quickly. Draketh studied him. Most warriors would have drawn a weapon or called for guards. You acted on instinct. I'm a pilot. We're trained to react fast. The Empress arrived with Murthai and a squad of her personal guard. She looked at the blood on Marcus's hands, at the captured server, at the scorch mark on the wall. Her expression was ice. "Who sent you?" she asked the server. The server said nothing, just smiled. "Your Majesty," Lord Kesvin said, stepping forward from the crowd. "This is outrageous. An assassination attempt in your own hall. This human has brought danger to our court." "This human just saved lives," Murthai said sharply, "including his own. Only because he was the target," Kesvin continued. "His presence here is destabilizing. His resemblance to the late Emperor creates confusion and conflict. Some see it as an omen. Others see it as an insult. Perhaps it would be better if the human delegation returned home." Marcus saw several nobles nodding. Others looked uncertain. The Empress raised her hand and everyone fell silent. "Lord Kesvin makes interesting points," she said quietly. "But he forgets something important. This human was attacked in my hall, under my protection. That is not a matter of convenience or comfort. That is a matter of honor." She turned to Marcus. "Captain Chun, are you able to continue your duties?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "Good. Then our discussions will continue as planned." She looked at the gathered nobles. "And anyone who attempts to harm the human delegation again will answer to me personally. Am I clear?" The nobles bowed and murmured agreement. But Marcus saw the look some of them exchanged. This wasn't over. Later, back in his quarters, Marcus found his hands shaking as the adrenaline wore off. Lieutenant Park brought him a medical kit. "That was insane," she said, cleaning the scrapes on his palms. "You just took down a Zarathian. They're way stronger than us." "Yeah, but they fight honorably. They have rules. I don't." Marcus winced as she applied antiseptic. Humans fight to win. There was a knock on the door. Park answered it and stepped back in surprise. The Empress stood there alone, without guards or attendants. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, starting to stand. "Sit. You're injured." She came in and closed the door behind her. Park excused herself quickly, leaving them alone. "You didn't have to come here," Marcus said. "Yes, I did." The Empress sat down across from him. "You saved lives tonight. You reacted without hesitation, without thought for your own safety. That is rare. I'm a soldier. It's what we do." Cathryan was a soldier too. He would have called for guards. He would have followed protocol. She smiled slightly. "You jumped on an assassin with your bare hands. That was very un-Zarathian of you. Sorry? Don't apologize. It was effective." She leaned forward. "I need to tell you something. The faction that killed Cathryan is still active. They opposed his reforms, his desire to open the Empire to change. They have been quiet for many years, but your arrival has stirred them up again. Because I look like him. Because you represent what he stood for. New ideas. New ways. Connections with other species." She paused. "I should send you home. It would be safer for you. But you won't," Marcus said. "No, because sending you home would be letting them win. And because..." She stopped, searching for words. "Because talking with you, I remember why I loved him. Not because you are the same, but because you are different. You remind me that there are many ways to be strong, many ways to lead. You make me think about possibilities instead of just memories." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. The Empress stood up. "Rest tonight, Captain. Tomorrow we have a crisis in the Mayan colonies. A dispute over resources that threatens to become violent. Your Ambassador Wilson has suggested you might be able to help." She walked to the door, then looked back. "Perhaps we will see how humans solve problems that have no honorable solution." After she left, Marcus lay back on the too-long bed and stared at the ceiling. He'd come here to be a military advisor on a diplomatic mission. Instead, he'd become some kind of ghost reminder of a dead emperor, survived an assassination attempt, and somehow gained the attention of the most powerful woman in 3 sectors. He laughed quietly. If this was what first contact was like, humanity was in for an interesting time. The mining colony problem was worse than Marcus expected. 3 different groups claimed rights to the same asteroid field, each one backed by noble houses that had been enemies for generations. If it came to violence, thousands would die. The council meeting had been going for 4 hours, and they were no closer to a solution. Marcus sat in the observation area with Lieutenant Park, watching the Zarathian nobles argue in circles. Everything had to follow ancient laws. Every solution had to respect traditional boundaries and honor codes. "This is impossible," Park whispered. "None of them will back down. It's all about pride." Marcus studied the star map showing the disputed territory. 3 colonies, 3 claims, all valid under different interpretations of Zarathian law. The Empire had ways to handle this kind of thing, but they all involved lengthy trials or single combat between champions. Both options would take too long. The miners were already arming themselves. High Chancellor Drakath stood up. "Perhaps we should adjourn for today. Clearly, we will not reach agreement." "Wait," Marcus said. Standing up, the room went quiet. Technically, he wasn't supposed to speak unless asked. But the Empress gestured for him to continue. "Your Majesty, lords and ladies, I have a suggestion. May I approach the map?" The Empress nodded. Marcus walked down to the center of the room where the holographic display floated. He studied it for a moment, then started pointing. "The problem is you're treating this like 3 separate claims to the same space. But look at the actual asteroid field. It's not uniform. This section here has mostly iron and nickel. This part over here is rich in rare minerals. And this 3rd section has ice deposits. We know the composition," Lord Kesvin said coldly. "That does not solve the legal question of ownership. What if ownership isn't the answer?" Marcus continued. "What if instead of fighting over who owns what, you create a joint operation? Each house gets exclusive rights to the resources they need most. House Rathan gets the rare minerals for their manufacturing. House Kelmer gets the ice for their terraforming project. House Shiren gets the iron for construction." "Impossible," Lady Shirol said. "The law states that territorial claims cannot be divided. One house must have sovereignty." "Then change the law," Marcus said. The room erupted. Nobles stood up, shouting. Some looked outraged. Others looked thoughtful. The Empress raised her hand for silence. "You suggest we simply ignore centuries of legal tradition?" Drakath asked. "I suggest you be practical," Marcus said. "Look, I get it. Honor matters. Tradition matters. But so do those miners who are about to kill each other. If they die while you're arguing about legal precedent, what honor is there in that?" Murthy stood up. "The human makes a valid point. The purpose of law is to create order and prosperity. If the law creates violence instead, then the law has failed." "This is not the Zarathian way," Kesvin said. "Maybe that's the problem," Marcus said. "Maybe being Zarathian doesn't mean doing things the way they've always been done. Maybe it means finding the best solution, even if it's new." The Empress was watching him with those golden eyes. He couldn't tell what she was thinking. "We will vote," she said finally. "All in favor of exploring Captain Chun's proposal, make it known." About half the nobles raised their hands. The other half sat silent or shook their heads. It wasn't enough for a majority. "Then I, as Empress, invoke my right of final judgment," Velshara said. "We will implement a trial version of this joint operation. If it succeeds within 1 cycle, it becomes permanent. If it fails, we return to traditional methods." Kesvin looked furious but said nothing. The meeting adjourned. As Marcus left the council chamber, Murtha caught up with him. "That was bold, Captain. You have made enemies today. I was trying to help. I know. And you did. But some of these nobles do not want help. They want power. She glanced around, then lowered her voice. We have discovered something. Something about your resemblance to Cathrian. Can you come with me? The Empress is waiting. They went to a private room, smaller and less formal than the throne room. The Empress was there, with several people Marcus didn't recognize. They wore robes marked with symbols he'd learned, meant scholar or scientist. Captain Chun, the Empress said. These are our chief geneticists and historians. They have been researching your DNA and our records. Show him. One of the scientists pulled up a holographic display. 3,000 years ago, the Empire sent exploration missions to many worlds. One of those ships visited a planet in what you call the Sol System. Your Earth. Marcus stared at the display. It showed star charts, navigation logs, and what looked like photographs of Earth from space. The mission was supposed to be simple observation, the scientist continued. But the ship suffered a malfunction. 3 crew members took a landing craft to Earth's surface to gather materials for repairs. They intended to leave within days. But they didn't, Marcus said quietly, starting to understand. No, the ship's main drive failed catastrophically. The rest of the crew died. The 3 on Earth were stranded. The scientist pulled up more images. Ancient ones, showing Zarathians in primitive clothing, living among early humans. They integrated into your population. This was in the region you now call China, approximately 3,000 years ago. And you think I'm descended from them. We know you are. Your genetic markers prove it. You carry Zarathian DNA. Very little, diluted by 3,000 years of human breeding, but it's there. The scientist looked excited. This explains the resemblance. You and Catherine share a very, very distant ancestor. One of those stranded crew members. Marcus sat down heavily. So I'm part alien. You are part Zarathian, the Empress corrected gently. About 1%. The rest is human. But that 1% created your facial structure, your build, certain other traits. Does this change anything? Marcus asked. For the treaty? For Earth joining the Council? That depends on how we present it, Mirthai said. This information has not been made public yet. But it will be soon. Lord Kesvin has spies everywhere. When he learns of this, he will try to use it. Use it how? The Empress stood and walked to the window. He will claim that Earth is not an independent world, but a lost Zarathian colony. That humans are not a separate species, but descendants of our people. Therefore, Earth should be under Imperial control, not allowed to join the Council as equals. That's ridiculous, Marcus said. 1% Zarathian DNA from 3,000 years ago doesn't make us your property. Legally, it might, Draketh said, entering the room. I have reviewed the ancient laws. If humans are descended from Imperial citizens, then technically Earth could be claimed as Imperial territory. It has never been tested because we've never found such a situation before. So what do? Marcus asked. The Empress turned to face him. We fight back. Not with weapons, but with words and law. We make the case that humans are separate, independent, evolved beyond their Zarathian ancestors into something new. And if that doesn't work, then we use your human adaptability, she said with a slight smile. We find a solution that doesn't follow the rules. Because that is what you are good at, yes. Over the next 2 days, Marcus worked with Ambassador Wilson and the Empress's advisors to prepare their case. They gathered evidence of human uniqueness, human achievement, human independence. They prepared arguments based on Zarathian law, human law, and common sense. But on the 3rd day, Lord Kesvin made his move. He called for a Grand Council session. which required the Empress to attend and allow all nobles to speak. He stood before the assembled court and presented the evidence of human Zerethian ancestry. Therefore, he concluded, I call for Earth to be annexed into the Empire as a protectorate world. The humans need our guidance, our protection, our wisdom. They are children of the Empire, lost and wandering. We must bring them home. Several nobles nodded and voiced agreement. Others looked uncertain. The Empress remained calm, but Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders. Captain Chun, the Empress said, you have heard Lord Kesvin's argument. What say you? Marcus stood up. His heart was pounding, but his voice was steady. Lord Kesvin is right about one thing. Humans do carry Zerethian DNA, but he's wrong about what that means. He walked to the center of the room. 3,000 years ago, 3 Zerethians crashed on Earth. They could have died. They could have given up. But they survived. They adapted. They integrated with humans. And over 3,000 years, their children spread across the planet. Marcus pulled up the holographic display. Do you know what happened during those 3,000 years? Earth experienced wars, plagues, ice ages, and natural disasters. Humans built civilizations, destroyed them, and built them again. We split the atom. We went to space. We nearly destroyed ourselves and pulled back from the edge. This proves my point, Kesvin said. You need guidance. No, Marcus said firmly. It proves humans took that tiny piece of Zerethian DNA and evolved it through the harshest crucible imaginable. We're not lesser Zerethians. We're what happens when your genes meet Earth's brutal evolutionary pressure. We're faster, more adaptable, more creative. We're not your children. We're your cousins, evolved in a different direction. He looked at the Empress. You value honor and tradition. That's beautiful. But humans value survival and innovation. We fight dirty, we break rules, and we never give up. The formal signing ceremony was scheduled for the next day. Earth would officially join the Galactic Council with the Zerethian Empire as their primary sponsor. It should have been a moment of pure celebration, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He found Ambassador Wilson in her quarters, reviewing the ceremony protocols. Ambassador, I think we have a problem. We have several problems, she said, not looking up. The seating arrangements alone are giving me a headache. What's your concern? Lord Kesvin. He's been too quiet since the council vote. No protests, no legal challenges, nothing. That's not normal behavior for someone who just lost a major political battle. Wilson set down her datapad and looked at him seriously. You think he's planning something? I think desperate people do desperate things. And we just humiliated him in front of the entire court. Marcus paced the room. If I were him, I'd want to prevent the signing ceremony. Maybe make it look like Earth is too dangerous, too unstable. Or maybe just remove the problem entirely. Remove you mean me, the Empress. Anyone who supports the Alliance. Marcus stopped pacing. We need to increase security for tomorrow. I'll talk to High Chancellor Dreketh, Wilson said, reaching for her communicator dot, but before she could activate it, alarms started blaring throughout the palace. Red lights flashed. Marcus ran to the window and saw ships approaching the Crystal Palace. Not many, maybe 5 or 6, but they were moving fast and their weapons were charging. That's not a drill, Marcus said. The door burst open. Lieutenant Park ran in with 2 of the security team. We're under attack. The Empress's guards are evacuating her to the secure bunker. We're supposed to come with you to the human delegation shelter. No, Marcus said. If this is Kesvin's move, he'll target the Empress first. We need to help protect her. Captain, our orders are going to get her killed if we're wrong. Marcus grabbed his sidearm from his quarters. It was a human weapon, slut-thrower technology that the Zerethians considered primitive. But it worked, and that was all that mattered. Park, take the ambassador and the others to the shelter. I'm going to the throne room. You can't go alone, Park said. Then come with me. But move fast. They ran through corridors filled with Zarathian guards rushing to defensive positions. Nobles and staff fled towards secure areas. The palace shook as the attacking ships fired on the shields. Marcus heard return fire from the palace's defensive systems. The throne room doors were sealed. Marcus pounded on them. Open up. This is Captain Chun. The doors cracked open and Murthy looked out. Captain, you should be in the shelter. Where's the Empress? Behind me, preparing to evacuate. But the passage to the bunker has been sabotaged. Someone planted explosives. We're trapped here until engineers can clear a path. That's the plan, Marcus said, pushing inside. They knew she'd come here first. They're herding her into a trap. The throne room held about 30 people. The Empress stood near her throne, surrounded by her personal guard. High Chancellor Draketh was coordinating the defense through a communications terminal. When Velshara saw Marcus, something flickered in her eyes. Relief, maybe. Captain Chun, you should not be here. Neither should you, Your Majesty. This whole thing is a setup. Kesvin is forcing you to stay in this room. The attackers have been identified, Draketh said grimly. Ships from House Verthan and House Kelmer. Both houses aligned with Lord Kesvin. This is a coup attempt. How long until reinforcements arrive? Marcus asked. 20 minutes for the defense fleet to reach us. But our shields will fail in 10 minutes at the current rate of fire. Marcus looked around the throne room. Are there any other exits besides the main doors and the sabotage passage? No, Murthy said. This room was designed to be defensible. Only 2 ways in or out. Then we make a third. Marcus studied the walls. They were crystal, like the rest of the palace. Beautiful, but strong. Do these walls conduct energy? Yes. The entire palace is built to channel solar radiation from the twin suns. Why? Because we're going to overload one section and blow a hole through it. Marcus turned to the Empress. Your Majesty, I need you to trust me. This is going to be very un-Zarathian. She smiled slightly, even in the middle of the crisis. Show me human adaptability, Captain. Marcus, Lieutenant Park, and several of the Zarathian engineers worked quickly. They rerouted power from the throne room systems to one small section of wall. The crystal began to glow, getting brighter and hotter. The shields outside failed, just as the wall exploded outward in a shower of crystal shards. Go. Everyone go. Marcus shouted. The Empress's guards went first, clearing a path. The Empress followed, moving quickly despite her formal robes. Marcus and Park covered the rear, watching the main doors. They heard explosions. Someone was trying to break through. They made it. Into a service corridor, just as the throne room doors burst open. Marcus saw figures in armor rushing in, weapons raised. He fired 3 shots, dropping 2 of them, then ran after the others. The service corridors were narrow and confusing, designed for maintenance workers, not royal processions. But that made them perfect for defense. Every turn could be an ambush point. The Zarathian guards set up defensive positions while the rest of the group moved forward. Where does this lead? Marcus asked Murthy. To the lower levels. There's a hangar bay there. If we can reach it, we can escape in ships. How many ships? Several small craft. Enough for everyone. They fought their way down 3 levels. The attackers kept coming, but the narrow corridors prevented them from using their numbers effectively. Marcus was amazed at how well the humans and Zarathians worked together. The guards had strength and discipline. The humans had flexibility and dirty tricks. Park used her engineering knowledge to seal doors behind them and create obstacles. They reached the hangar bay to find it under guard by more attackers. About 15 of them, heavily armed, standing between the group and the ships. "We're trapped," Draket said. "No, we're not." Marcus looked at the hangar bay layout. Large room, high ceiling, ships parked in rows. "Your Majesty, can your guards create a distraction? Draw their attention to the main entrance?" "Yes, but..." "Then what?" "Then Park and I go in through the side maintenance hatch and hit them from behind." Classic pincer movement. That is extremely risky. It's also our best option. Marcus checked his weapon. Almost out of ammunition. "On my signal, have your guards make noise at the main entrance. Lots of noise." It took 3 minutes to get into position. Marcus and Park crawled through a maintenance tunnel that smelled like fuel and burned metal. They emerged in the hangar bay behind a row of ships. About 30 feet from the attackers, Marcus gave the signal through his communicator. The Empresses. Guards started firing at the main entrance, shouting and creating chaos. The attackers all turned to face the threat. Marcus and Park opened fire from behind. The attackers scattered, caught between two forces. Some tried to return fire, but they'd lost their advantage. The Empress's guards pushed forward. Within minutes, it was over. Lord Casvin stood among the survivors, his armor scorched and his weapon on the ground. He stared at the Empress with hatred in his eyes. "You should have stayed in the throne room," he said. "You should have died with honor." "Honor?" The Empress asked quietly. "You speak of honor while attempting assassination and treason?" She stepped closer to him. "Catherine died because of people like you. People who fear change more than they love their empire. I will not let you destroy what he built." "What he built was weakness," Casvin spat. "Opening our borders to inferior species. Abandoning our traditions. And now you compound his errors by allying with these humans. These humans just saved my life," Valshara said. "Using tactics you would consider dishonorable. Blowing holes in walls. Crawling through maintenance tunnels. Fighting from ambush. But we are alive, and you have failed." The defense fleet arrived 10 minutes later. They captured the attacking ships and arrested everyone involved in the coup attempt. Casvin and 24 nobles were taken into custody. The signing ceremony happened the next day as scheduled, though in a different location. The throne room needed repairs. Marcus stood next to Ambassador Wilson as the Empress and Earth's representatives signed the treaty that would bring humanity into the Galactic Council. After the ceremony, the Empress asked Marcus to walk with her in the palace gardens. They were beautiful, filled with plants from 12 worlds, all growing together in carefully managed harmony. "You have caused quite a disruption to my life, Captain Chun," she said, but her tone was warm. "I'm sorry about that, Your Majesty. Don't be. You reminded me of something important. Change is not betrayal. New methods are not insults to old ways. They are simply new ways." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "When I first saw you, I thought the universe was being cruel, showing me what I had lost. But now I understand. You are not an echo of Catherine. You are proof that life continues, that new connections can form, that the future does not have to be a shadow of the past." "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Now, Earth joins the Council. Your people will have a voice among the stars, and the Zarathian Empire will have a new kind of alliance, not based on conquest or tradition, but on choice. Some of your nobles won't like that." "Some of my nobles just attempted a coup," she said dryly.